Hamilton City. Okay. So that was the team that made the way, and it's my privilege today to speak on behalf of them to really share our experience and to encourage you maybe to start something, a movement in your own area. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you how we can achieve a more sustainable, inclusive and prosperous region by 2030 using the Sustainable Development Goals or the SDG framework. Before we begin, many of you know something of the Waikato Wellbeing Project, but some don't. So I'd just like to share a brief video. It's about 5 minutes long, so bear with me, to give you a bit of background about our journey up until the point of establishing the goals.
He te atua ka rawa ina anei mātou hei whakamoemiti, hei whakawhetaiti ki a koe mauri mai o Aroa, hei manaki hei tiaki I tēnei kaupapa mō tēnei rā, ko hi karaiti hoki tū mātou kauwhakaora, āmene. Tēnā rā tātou katoa.
Waikato Wellbeing Project is a powerful tool developed especially by and for the Waikato. It's 17 smart targets around the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals.
I am so thrilled to see the Waikato region take on this concept and this idea of a Waikato Wellbeing Project.
There's a lot of action in the Waikato, a lot of movement for change, and this is taking a systems approach to do things differently to get a different result. Well, at the moment we're developing the goals, so we're building on existing research using the expertise in the region to develop a menu of smart targets, potential targets for each of the Sustainable Development Goals, which will then stress test through an economist and then take to our communities.
The reality of modern living is that we all get focused in on our particular goal, our particular target, our particular work stream, our particular view. What is great about the Sustainable Development Goals and the Wellness Project for the Waikato region is we're determining what is of most importance for all of us in terms of our overall well-being in this region. So that's where I think this project in particular is a critical one for us to work on.
Today I'm facilitating one of our subject matter expert workshops for the Waikato Wellbeing Project for community. We're taking a design thinking approach where we are utilising the insights and knowledge of our local experts who are working across a range of different activities within our region.
I'd also argue that the wellbeing approach is the only way to address the big challenges that confront us. If you think about issues like climate change, like inequality, like the future of work and the massive technological disruption that we're facing, like homelessness, or like mental health, they can only be dealt with by bringing all of our partners together.
I think the Waikato has a good history of working together. I think that's one of our characteristics and our strengths, and that's partly where this project has come from.
It's really great to be able to hear other people's thoughts and ideas for the future of the Waikato. We're a massive region with heaps of assets, heaps of potential, and I think, this room is full of people that can really help Waikato reach that potential, I guess.
We're going to use technology and take it to all the corners of the region to get some feedback from our communities about how they feel and think about these targets, and then in October to launch them to the region and plan for Phase 2. Phase 2 is where we take the Waikato Wellbeing Project and turn it into the Waikato Wellbeing Promise.
I'm really glad that the next stage of this process is around consulting communities, because I think that communities hold a lot of knowledge about what their issues are and what works for them.
In a nutshell, the Waikato Wellbeing Project is really an awesome opportunity for us as Waikato Tainui to give voice to our 5-year plan, to our what we're going to be concentrating on for the next 5 years, and what we see are indicators of well-being for our tribal membership, and find some good mates that we can work alongside and put some pressure on specific points that we think will make collective impact.
Ko Aotearoa, ko te awa ko au. I am the river and the river is me. Therefore, unless our environment is in a good, sound and well position, we can't be.
Yeah, I think that the Waikato Wellbeing Project is really exciting for the Waikato region, because it brings together economic development, environmental issues that are really important to us, especially as we're moving into challenges around climate change, and especially looking at the well-being of our people from a holistic point of view.
And so for me, that's why the Waikato Wellbeing Project is so important, because it is that grassroots driving of what is well-being, how do we measure it, what are the indicators, and what are the projects and the areas that we need to invest. So I am just absolutely delighted.
I've seen it work elsewhere, but I don't believe this kind of project has been rolled out in New Zealand before. I hope that this will be the first step in an iterative process where we achieve these goals together, we work together, we find a way of changing the system so that we're not having to fix problems at the bottom. We really want to look at abundance rather than protection of things that are already broken.
I strongly believe that by working together as a united force, all key stakeholders and shareholders of our community and the people and the environment that we live in is a philosophy that is founded now, that'll be long-standing in the future, and I believe it is the only way to work in partnership and collaboration for the greater good of the people, the assets and the taonga that we live in.
Ko tahi te kōwhao o te ngira e kuhana ai te miro mā te miro pango me te miro whiro. Kia mau ki te aroha te ture me te whakapono. There's one eye of the needle through which the white, red and the black threads pass. Hold strong to love, law and faith. Work together for the aspirations of the next generation and next generation.
Great, thank you everyone for bearing with me there. I'll just try and share my screen again with you and come up with our slideshow. Here, let's see. I don't want YouTube right now. We want, sorry, apologies. Let's get the technology. Just apologies there. Let's find it. Okay. So that's the website. Let's close that one down. Are you able to see my slideshow there? The Waikato Wellbeing Project. Thank you, Donald. Can see you there. So that's our illustrious finance minister. So we heard from our first speakers, the government isn't taking an across-government approach to the Waikato wellbeing, to wellbeing and to sustainable development goals, but I believe there's a possibility for us as regions to really lead that change. So our kaupapa, our purpose of the Waikato Wellbeing Project was to develop a more sustainable, prosperous and inclusive Waikato by 2030. We wanted to catalyse a movement for change in the Waikato. So we exploring our theory of change around that, looking at the targets and what we would want to achieve together and how we can all contribute and collaborate to achieve the targets. We had some givens as a region for this project. And I'll talk to these a little bit more later, but you can see them here. The givens of these targets, they're co-created by communities and experts. They're based on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We must change and we must act to meet these targets. That change will be messy and difficult and time consuming, but we are all leaders in this change and we have to trust each other, share and enhance each other's mana. So they were the key points that we had there to start with our kaupapa. We talked about what does it take to create a movement for change. Well, firstly, we decided not to wait for permission. So this was we're doing something differently and we really did just get on with it. We're looking for disruptors, for people who can make the change happen and to work out how we can support those people and not to be afraid of failing, to advocate for long-term perspectives and to continuously communicate, creating links and relationships between people and between sectors. So these are the things that we decided was important to us in making a movement in the Waikato. These photos here, this is taken from our Waikato Wellbeing Summit, which was on the 14th of February, 2020. And as you all know, not long after that, the world changed, perhaps for quite some time. So we had 350 people in the room. It was a great privilege to talk about our targets and what we could achieve together with them in a room together. And then COVID hit. And for a while there, we thought, this is not the top priority. Let's just put it aside for a bit. People are dealing with other things. But as time progressed, the community and people were saying to us, actually, the Sustainable Development Goals and the Waikato Wellbeing Project are now more important than ever. if we are going to build back better after COVID, we need to do things in a different way. We need to take a systems approach to achieve well-being and abundance as regions, not just worry about fixing things. So we need a new narrative. The Sustainable Development Targets are a way of aligning effort. We can start narrow and build over time. Leadership is key to achieving these targets, and leadership can take many forms, but we need to identify and gain commitment for the leadership. We had in our movement here in Waikato, we have something called Manutaki, which I'll speak to a little bit later, but we also need to understand the ecosystem, the roles people play and the organizations people play that are at work and how they work together. And we are looking at a new narrative, doing things differently. So our new narrative puts at its heart the Indigenous perspective of sustainable well-being. So we've taken that Stockholm model of healthy environments, vibrant communities, and a strong economy, with the understanding that a strong economy and vibrant communities are wholly owned subsidiaries of a healthy environment. But beyond that, we had SDG 17, and the po down the middle of our stack there represents Te Ao Māori. We need to adopt a new narrative, leave behind the idea we're an individual, we're separated from each other in our environments, and we need to recognise ourselves as part of a whole, a collective impact for the benefit of the commons, ahead of the individual, and this will prevail. So we believe that Aotearoa New Zealand has a distinct advantage in having the basis of Te Ao Māori there to work with and to build upon. And that's our po down the middle there. Okay, so our Sustainable Development Goals, as a region, we aim to come up with 17 because there are. However, we came up with 10, and it was because there wasn't really the momentum behind some of the others. They are still work-ons, but we have 10 goals. For example, did you know that about 1 in 6 children live below the poverty line in Waikato? One of our Sustainable Development Goals is for the Waikato region is that by 2030, less than 1% will. Now, what's even more important than the hard target and the metrics which we can use to measure that is that achieving this target means that our children can thrive because none are hungry at school or cold at home. They can afford to participate in social, artistic, cultural and sporting activities. So one goal has many outcomes, and we recognise that the goals are interrelated. To achieve one means you'll interact with a lot. In fact, that was part of our key decision-making criteria in choosing these goals. We asked ourselves, is it doable? Is it a goal that could be achieved? We were aspirational, but is it doable? Secondly, is there already movement for change in this area, in the Waikato? Are there already many people working in their own lanes, potentially, but working towards this target? And thirdly, if we achieve this target, will we have a disproportionately positive impact on a whole lot of other sustainable development goals? So these are the things that we use, and they're a bit hard to read on the screen. So if you would like to see them more closely, you'll find them on the website, which is waikatowellbeingproject.co.nz. Leadership is crucial to achieving systems change and sustainable wellbeing for our regions. This chap here was the chair of Energy Trust. He created a safe space for us to work at the edge of our ability, at the edge of our mandates, to actually do something differently. So just would like to acknowledge the leadership that we had within our own organisation there. These quotes come from the Global Steering Group for Impact Investment. We need to consider the materiality of impact. Lots of organisations doing good things is one thing. Lots of organisations doing the right things that support systems change and collective impact towards agreed targets is the most important. This is essential to ensure that the money is supporting the right type of impact. So we need also, the second one there, to understand system readiness, creating impact islands by supporting good organisations with good purpose in a system that doesn't have appropriate leadership to deliver the system-wide impact for the good of the commons. Well, it's merely tinkering on the outside. So it's understanding the system and helping people, the slow, hard work of collaboration. So our Manutaki. Manutaki is a term, if you imagine birds flying in formation, and the lead bird of those birds flying in formation is the Manutaki, the lead bird. And that's our analogy for a leader within our wellbeing kaupapa. And it's about turn taking. You're not always at the front. It's about taking a lead and then taking a turn back. It's about uplift, and it's about the group moving further and faster than you can move on your own. And we have some Manutaki leaders for each of those sustainable development goals who are working to achieve them in the Waikato. So these are our Manutaki targets that we talked about in our summit on the 14th of February last year. And how we all want, for example, the housing one for regional housing. Together in our backyard, all families are well housed. Everything relies on our natural capital. So these are some of the key strengths of the Manutaki that they're taking forward. But it's not just the Manutaki, everybody is a leader in this. We need to have agency, giving people enough opportunity to participate and co-create the movement itself. There needs to be a call to action. Act on it, don't just talk. As they say, the road is made by walking. And a strength of the Waikato region, our tagline, if you like, is we're stronger together. And that's truly the case of trying to achieve these audacious goals. Recognise the value of working together and reduce duplication as one of our targets. But also access. People need to have access to the goals, lowering the barriers and letting as many people as possible participate, and understanding what the barriers are for all players. We really do all have a role to play in this. There's an impact ecosystem which consists of investors, consumers, citizens, government, local government, charities, not-for-profits. We're all part of this, but even young people, and there were quite a few involved in our initial work, the drivers of change. So we all have a role to play in achieving the goals. We're all part of the impact ecosystem supporting sustainable well-being. This piece of work here might be hard to read. It's also on our website, but this is an impact economy ecosystem. It was developed by Rebecca from the Lever Room, and it really just summarizes the various parts of the groupings that comprise the impact economy. So we have the financial economy, we have government and regulators. There are intermediaries such as impact funds and others. We have the real economy and civil society, all working together, as you see, to achieve the goals at the top. It's a donut shape, sort of playing off the work of Kate Raworth. You may have read The Donut Economy, Donut Economics, really to indicate that we have environmental boundaries, and we also have a social foundation that we shouldn't go below. So this is yes, go Rebecca, I see in there. Absolutely, go Rebecca. She's done great work there for us. And it was developed in coalition with the Waikato Wellbeing Project and the Impact Investment Network. Philanthropy is the position that I come from, working for a philanthropic trust. And I believe that philanthropy has a catalytic role to play in building an impact economy. There are many things that we can do to help bring things together. And one of the things, the important aspects, is supporting, as I say, the slow, hard work of collaboration. It doesn't happen on its own. There's a reason why many organizations doing many good things don't work together. It takes time and resource. And so I believe that the philanthropic community has an opportunity to support collective impact. If you read about collective impact models, you'll often see that there's need for a backbone support organisation. And that's where Well Energy Trust with Waikato Regional Council has stepped up. And we are working to develop a backbone support function for our movement. This is quite a complex picture. On the left-hand side, you see the wisdom, the collective ecosystem, the various chiefs that we need to be able to access in arts and culture, health, funders, iwi, local government, central government. All of these parties are necessary if we're to achieve the goals. On the right-hand side, you'll see many, I call them tables. There are flights of Manutaki moving towards SDG targets, and that's collectives of action working towards the goals already. In between, we are currently establishing a wellbeing support office. We have an executive director, Harvey Brooks, and he's currently working through what needs to be in place to make sure that we can support the movement as it develops over time. It'll have several functions. It's leadership to support the ecosystem, mapping and development, research to understand the systemic issues and the questions and challenges, advocacy to address the barriers in the system, data collection and measurement of what matters, as well as support in making sense of the data, continuous communication, and support to facilitate collaboration, ensuring the right people come together to address the complex challenges we face as a region. Connection and partnership is critical. Connection with government, business, iwi, education, community, and with local funders. I think government has a role. I'm not sure if anyone on the line here is from government, but just for what it's worth, government can make it easier for social organisations to access government capital contracts. They can make it possible for organisations to risk failure, as the risk can be shared or even transferred, and they can create an ecosystem of funds to support social enterprise. I was interested to hear one of the panel speakers saying there's a need for government to support at a national level to bring the SDGs together, and I think that's a genuine call for action. If we really want top down to meet bottom up, then it is necessary for us to have some support to do that. These are some verbatim comments from Jacinda Ardern at the summit. Thank you for your constant support of our communities. GDP measures everything except things that make life worthwhile. You do what you measure. We decided to create new measures. You are changing the questions to find different answers. And we were talking at the wellbeing budget that time, 2019, focused on wellbeing being at the heart of what we do. It is the first budget with a wellbeing at its core. And she also said, it does not surprise me that Waikato are the ones testing the blueprint for our country. I believe that this is a model that we could share, and others could also develop to suit their own regions and their own communities. So a few reflections before I ask you to go into breakout rooms and reflect yourself on what might happen in your region. We learnt that you do need to have a learning mindset. It is an iterative process. We're not perfect, and we do need to be ready to change and to evolve. We need to go where the energy is and to build on the expertise and networks in the region. There's a lot of good work happening already. It needs to be as inclusive as possible, investing in time and relationships. We need to embed our Indigenous approach to wellbeing, and we need to stay true to the givens we mentioned at the beginning. So don't wait too long to get going or plan too much. We can't underestimate the complexity or the pushback when the status quo is disrupted, and don't expect it to be easy or to be fast, because it's not. So that's a quick overview. I shall stop sharing there. And there we go. Now I can see your beautiful faces. There we go. So that's a quick overview of the Waikato Wellbeing Project. I'm guessing you'll have some questions there that you'd like to put to us, and we think we've got some time, Chloe, to answer those. But also there's an opportunity to go into a breakout room. So if you've put your region on there, we will work with you to move into breakout rooms where you can discuss the possibilities for your region. Chloe?
Great. You've been mostly assigned into breakout rooms according to your region, so I'm going to open those rooms now. If you haven't put your region in your name, you have been sort of randomly assigned, so hopefully you can still have some good conversation and make some meaningful connections. So get ready to go into your rooms.
Yep, kia ora. Welcome back, everyone. I know that wasn't long enough. You would have just gone around your room and said hello and you had to leave, but
yeah.
The biggest oak tree starts with a small acorn, and that's the conversation in your meeting for the first time. That's why I wanted it in your regional groups. And Tony Moore asked a question, which was, what was the genesis of the Waikato Wellbeing Project? So I can only speak from my own perspective, but for me, it was actually a trip to Nepal. And I went to Nepal and was going to do some walking, as you do when you go to Nepal. And I bought my ticket, and on my boarding card, it said, portion of your ticket price has gone towards these 3 organisations which are working towards our sustainable development goals for Nepal. And I thought, that's fabulous. I love it when my money goes towards good things. That's terrific. When I sat down in the seat in Yeti Airlines, what you fly when you're going to go out there, and pulled out in the seat pocket in front of me, there was a flyer which had the 17 Sustainable Development Goals for Nepal, and they were very specific for them. So, for example, to reduce the rate of childhood stuntedness from this to this by this date. And I thought, well, that's fantastic. That it's not some nebulous goal that we can't relate to. That's an actual goal that they can measure and report against and make progress against, and it's important to them. But wow, if they can do that in Nepal, why can't we do it in the Waikato? And when I came back, it's like an idea that's had its time, a good colleague of mine from Waikato Regional Council rang and we were having a conversation, and she said, wouldn't it be fabulous if we had our own sustainable, our place-based, regionally focused goals that we could measure and report against for Waikato? That kind of, for the two of us, that was the start of it. Pedram, you asked a question about the measures and indicators, and I think it's really very important that we come up with meaningful measures and indicators for these goals. And so that's something that Harvey there, sitting there, is working on now, is working with the groups of people. So we'll take the Regional Housing Initiative for an example. They have got a global goal of reducing, so everybody in the region's well housed, but there's some interim goals that are measurable that move towards that one. So how big the waiting list is, for example. So there are several goals that they've gotten put in place, which are in existence. We don't want to be limited by what is already being measured, but they need to be meaningful. They need to be something that speaks to government targets and goals as well, because we need to share them up through the line. But that's a work in progress for each of the groups, is how do we measure and report. Would anyone like to feedback from their room, any takeaways or questions that came from your group?
We had one question. Oh, sorry, Tony Moore here. In the Canterbury group, we had one question. If everyone is selecting their own sustainable development goal projects and measuring different things, then it's hard to compare across the country. So it was about, standardised data collection and information throughout New Zealand.
I think there's definitely a role for that, and we've got to be careful. I don't know, Harvey, feel free to pipe up if you'd like to make comment there. But from the beginning, we've talked about finding targets and measures that will speak to national targets and measures, which in turn will speak to international ones. But have you got a comment there at all, Harvey?
I think that's logical, Raewyn. I guess the complementary thought on that is that these targets and measures still do need to mean something to real communities and real people. So however we kind of build packages, it needs to speak to people in a real way as well. So it's not just remote metrics, which are at such a level that they just don't really motivate and inspire. I know you're not saying that, Tony, but I think we need both. Yeah. So it's not, we have the one global measure, but we need several community-based measures. And it is for the community to come up with their own measures as well, starting with the first step. We need the story, as well as the data. Exactly. Someone, Alina, I agree. We need the story as well as the data. Sometimes the story can be more powerful, but we also need the data. So both are very, very important. Changing the narrative is part of what we're trying to achieve. How is the project funded? So we're very fortunate. Well Energy Trust has committed $3 million over the next 5 years towards the Backbone Support Organisation. And that is being matched by partners in terms of not matched dollar for dollar, but also providing resource and support. So Waikato Regional Council, for example, is providing some in-kind support for that. We expect that as the project develops, there will be a need for funding and grants, but these things exist already. So it's a matter of being more informed about how we spend our money in the region. Impact investment is something that's growing in New Zealand and is really a useful thing for achieving some of these targets. And ultimately, I guess policy levers and government are also very important if we're to achieve the goals. So it's not always about money. It's quite often about partnership. In fact, it's always about partnership. It's often about policy. It's often about working together to understand what the gaps are in the system, and that informs people like me as a community funder to know where to put my investment. So we are fortunate to have some support for the Backbone organisation.
Kia ora, everyone, and Raewyn, I'm really sorry, we're going to have to start to wrap the session up.
Oh no, thank you so much, everybody. As they say, waka ika noa, we're all in this together, and the Sustainable Development Goals, they do give us a way of ensuring we're paddling in the same direction. So I encourage you in your regions to reach out to each other and see what you can do to work together and achieve the targets together. Thank you for listening.